You know, after 57 years and multiple plays on the radio, this album still holds up to this very day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video with Monkey Sensing Sensei and another installment of my series, Meditation Through Vinyl. And today I have a very important album to show you guys, and that, of course, would be the Beatles' Hard Day's Night. Yes, the Beatles' third album after Please Please Me, and with the Beatles in the UK, of course. And this album is very momentous because this is the first album to be written by John and Paul exclusively. No cover songs, nothing written by the other guys. That wouldn't come until later on. But this is the first album, and I think the only album actually to be written just by Paul and John. Now, this is actually a soundtrack record of sorts because there is a movie called A Hard Day's Night, which most people probably have seen by now. That came out about 54 years ago now, give or take, and it's an excellent piece of cinema. One of the very first instances of a music video setting, 20 years before MTV was a thing. Talk about iconic. You literally have the album cover that looks like a different photo reels of the Beatles and their different personalities. It does a great job of putting that point home of it being a movie soundtrack record. Now, only technically the first side here is all the movie songs. These are the songs that were featured in the movie. Side 2 is just a bunch of songs they recorded, but they didn't get a chance to really put in the movie because I guess they just wouldn't fit in theme of the movie, or just because the movie might be too long because of it, because movies weren't really too long back then anyway. But this doesn't even feel like a soundtrack record. It's just the way the tracks are sequenced, the way it just plays, every song, it's just back-to-back great tracks. When you have an opener as iconic as A Hard Day's Night, as soon as you hear that opening chord, as soon as that noodle hits the turntable, it's just fantastic. Now, before I continue, yes, I have the 2012 reissue of when they reissued the whole Beatles catalog. From basically the UK catalog, anyway. They reissued it on vinyl. They did stereo reissues. Now, thing with these, a lot of people like to kind of harp on them because, yes, they are digital remasters. They are not analog like people wanted. But in my humble opinion, these actually sound pretty great. Maybe my setup isn't as hi-fi as a lot of these audiophiles have. I don't claim to have the best setup ever. But to me, these sound great. I have this one, and I have Revolver as well from the same reissue campaign. And I think they both sound fantastic. Now, again, that might just be because I have a very, very simple setup. And a very simple turntable, too. But as soon as you hear the opening chord to Hard Day's Night, you know that you're in for a classic record. And it continues on with I Should Have Known Better, If I Fell, one of those great love songs the Beatles were known for in their time. I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, one of my favorite George songs, which I thought he wrote, but he did not. That's actually a song written by Paul and John for George, but he does get a vocal appearance on this record, one of my favorites. And of course, I Love Her. God, what a song that is. And I Love Her, to me, is one of those showcase ballads from Paul McCartney. The song, to me, is almost like a desert love song with the acoustics in the background, the little acoustic notes that are in the background of the song. I really like that because it's almost like a breezy desert night. It's almost like Aladdin, kind of, where you hear it. It's like almost like you're playing it in the desert. And it's a very longing song, very emotional track, which, of course, Paul will be known for going way forward in the Beatles with other tracks like Blackbird and a bunch of songs like that. Paul was like the main schmaltzy love song guy in the Beatles anyway, which he would get flack for from John and a few people down the line, but that wouldn't be till way later on in the Beatles' career. But Tell Me Why, Can't Buy Me Love, another great Paul song. This side 1 alone is fantastic. If this was released as a soundtrack EP, this still might be considered a classic recording to this very day regardless. But then you get side 2 of the amazing songs, Anytime at All Cry Instead, Thing We Said Today, You Can't Do That, I'll Be Back. An excellent closer to end this record out. I gotta say, I'll Be Back is fantastic. I'd even finish with Things We Said Today. It's another great album track that could have been a closer. You could interchange those songs. But I think I'll Be Back kind of edges out just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just by the way it just fades out. Again, it almost fades out like And I Love Her, actually. A lot of songs on this album have a really nice fade out. And to me, this album is really the first album where the Beatles starting to mature in their songwriting. Paul and John are just a force to be reckoned with on this record. I mean, just every single song is just a step above what they did on the first two records. It's not Revolver or Rubber Soul or even Help or anything like that, or even Beatles for Sale in terms of like the mature, darker songwriting, but you could tell they're starting to get there with this record. This is just a masterpiece record. And I'm not even the biggest fan of soundtrack records, but this album to me really transcends the term of soundtrack record, because to me this is still a Beatles album. It just so happens to be a movie soundtrack record. And I'm so glad that we got these reissues as opposed to them reissuing the US catalog on vinyl, because the US catalog, ugh. Let me tell you guys, the US catalog, I know a lot of people say, oh, but the US catalog is so good too because it has all these different George Martin's little ditties and things. But to be honest, I'm not really a fan of that. The US reissues of those that they did on CD. Because while they sound great in mono, as they were intended, just you get a lot of filler songs. Like, to me, I'm not a big fan of having George Martin songs on the second side of just a bunch of orchestral cuts, and it's just... The US kind of got screwed over with those, and they're a nice novelty, don't get me wrong, but to me, the UK releases are the way to go, and I'm glad that these got reissued. Thing that's kind of a critique on this record for me, personally, that I really feel like Ringo doesn't get a song. Ringo doesn't have a song on this at all. He does not have one single song that was written by him or the Beatles at all. He is absent from this record. That's maybe one complaint I have. There's no Ringo song. And the track listing is literally 13 tracks. You could have found one track that was a Ringo song and put it on here. I think Bad Boy actually could have been put on this. I think that'd be great. That would fit really well on this. You could have put Bad Boy, and that would have been a nice equal 14 songs. 7 on one side, 7 on the other side, like the Beatles were so good at doing previously with Please Please Me, and I believe With the Beatles also has 14 songs. They could have continued that tradition, and I believe they did that on Beatles for Sale, and I know they did that for Help, just to kind of keep with the consistency, but that's just me being the nitpicking, vinyl critic. I like having things nice and even, but that's not really a strike against the album, I guess. It's just kind of a nitpick that I have, is that, man, I wish Ringo had a song on here. Ringo could have done something. It could have put something on here from Ringo. I mean, he did a great job drumming regardless. I'm one of those people who really loves Ringo's drumming style. I know in recent years people have kind of criticized him because he's not the best drummer ever, but he was the glue that held the Beatles together. He was the one who really put besides their friendship and his funny personality that really kept them together, the band, for the longest time. I mean, they could have broken up way, way earlier had it not been for Ringo, I feel like. But his drumming just really glues those songs together. And he has such a personality behind the kit. As much as I respect Pete Best and those early recordings that they did with him, I'm glad they were able to get Ringo. Because Ringo really was just that final piece of that Beatles puzzle that we got out of him, and just how amazing he was as a drummer. Cannot give Ringo enough credit. He was just an amazing force in this band. I know people like to underestimate him. And trust me, I'm a George guy. I'm a George Harrison guy. It's my favorite Beatle. I have no shame in admitting that, because he's the quiet Beatle. But he was able to rise up in the ranks. Again, he doesn't have much of a showcase on this record, but still, the future was bright for him. And the future was bright for the Beatles, because after this, they made many more successful records, which I will be so happy to talk about in upcoming episodes. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Meditation Through Vinyl. I hope you guys have a great day. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below with what your favorite Beatles album might be, or what you think about Hard Day's Night. Let's get a discussion going. You guys have a great day, and keep meditating through vinyl.